You're fed up with being deceived, fed up with paying more and getting less, fed up with the shady accounting tricks because in the last 15 years, nothing was off the table. Even Ontario's budget numbers, under the Liberals, the books were cooked.
That was Ontario Premier Doug Ford earlier today announcing the launch of an inquiry and audit into previous government spending. The commission will be led by former BC Liberal Premier Gordon Campbell, and the findings will be made public. But just what does Ford mean when he says the books were cooked? And what tangible results will be the inquiry yield for Ontario taxpayers? Joining me now from Queen's Park is Ontario's Finance Minister, Vic Fedeli. Welcome.
Katie, it's a real privilege to be here today. Thank you.
I first want to ask you, what are you expecting the inquiry and the audit to find?
Well, there are two distinctly different operations. The Commission of Financial Inquiry will look at what went wrong, and the line by line will tell us how to fix it. So they really are quite distinct.
Now, Premier Ford had said today, and he also said it during the election campaign, that the books were cooked when it came to how the Liberals handled Ontario's finances. What does the Premier mean when he says the books were cooked?
Well, he's certainly referring to the great work done by both the Auditor General and the Financial Accountability Officer of Ontario. The Auditor General, in one of our last reports to the legislature, told us that the reports from the Liberals, and these are her quotes, were deceptive, unreliable. In fact, she actually called the books bogus. That was the word she printed in her report. So certainly Premier Ford was right on the mark in saying what he said, because he was quoting really from the Auditor General.
The phrase cooked books, it seems to imply criminality. Do you expect that there is some sort of criminality involved in this, or do you just think that this is blatant mishandling of finances?
Well, I think the Liberals have always had this goal of reaching some kind of a balanced budget without actually doing the heavy lifting, and would do anything, say anything they could to artificially balance the budget. So they didn't include certain issues. The so-called Fair Hydro Plan, the real cost of it wasn't included according to the Auditor General and the Financial Accountability Officer, not recording the pension costs properly according to the Auditor General, and others. The list literally goes on and on. They sold one-time assets such as Hydro One and many buildings and recorded that in operating revenue as opposed to a one-time revenue. So, you know, that's where the expression "they cook the books" comes from, and the Premier was right on the money.
So I just want to be clear, you're not necessarily looking for any sort of illegalities here. You're just looking to find out, from your perspective, where things could have been done differently.
We want to know how we got to where we are, what the true financial reality in Ontario is, and what are we going to do about it. So the Commission of Financial Inquiry will be completed their work by August 30th. We need that done at that date so we can include their findings, reflect on their findings in the public accounts, which is a major document in the fall, and then the fall economic statements. So we want to have that information for those purposes. The line by line will be a longer process to go through not only every ministry, but agencies, boards, commissions, the broader public service. We need to do a line by line to understand where are we spending the taxpayers' money, and is that the prudent thing to be spending money on?
And one thing I should say, that when the Auditor General did come out with her report, their findings were disputed by the Liberal government, which was in power at the time, and that's what they had said at that point. But I want to sort of circle around back to the Liberals again. Why pick former Liberal Premier, BC Premier Gordon Campbell?
Well, this is a blue chip group of people. Former Premier Gordon Campbell, a former High Commissioner to the UK, and you know, he is just an excellent person who's also done a complete financial reversal in the province that he was premier of. You've got Al Rosen, who's one of the most respected forensic auditors in the entire country, and you know, we continue through this commission. You know, we've got the former 36-year veteran of of the federal government, federal service, who also for 5 years was the deputy finance minister. So Mr. Horgan will serve in the third capacity, and I think you've got an absolutely irrefutable blue chip group of people.
There's something else that Premier Ford said today that I want you to respond to. Have a listen. We're going to play a clip. Listen in.
We're going to hit 124 ridings. It's going to be a big job. It's going to be the largest consultation ever in Ontario's history when it comes to education. Think of that, the largest ever in Ontario's history.
That, of course, is Doug Ford talking about plans to launch a consultation about Ontario's sex education program. How much is it going to cost to do this largest ever consultation?
Well, I'll leave that for the Premier to answer. What he is saying is it's all about consulting with the parents. And so, you know, if you look at what he's talking about there, bringing the parents in and getting their opinion, and look at what we're doing with the commission inquiry and the line by line, this is all about restoring trust. And I think when we see that, we know that it's promise made and promise delivered.
But with respect, sir, you're the finance minister. Should you not have a say in how much the government should be willing to spend, how much you should be allocating toward this project?
I think that'll be for the Premier to reveal.
Moving forward, you know, your government has vowed to cut spending, and there is a concern there that that's something you want to, as you say, you know, change the way Ontario spends its money. But one thing that you might not have as much control over is when it comes to the Canada-U.S. relationship. Your trade minister is headed to Washington later this week to testify at a series of hearings into whether the United States should put auto tariffs on imported vehicles and car parts, and those would include Canada. What impact would it have on Ontario's economy if Donald Trump went forward with his threat?
Well, let's hope we don't get there. I know that Minister Jim Wilson is indeed on his way to the States. You've heard him say, and you've heard the Premier say, and I'll say it as well, we stand shoulder to shoulder with the Prime Minister on representing the Canadian interests, but I know that Premier Ford will do absolutely everything in our power to protect the jobs here in Ontario.
So what kind of message is the minister going to be delivering at this committee hearing?
He'll be talking about the fact that there are so many U.S. states whose #1 trading partner is Ontario, and he'll talk to several more, half again as many again, who will tell you that their #2 trading partner is Ontario. And so you will hear a very strong message that says, look, we're in this together. He'll talk about how auto parts go back and forth across the border and back as many as 7 times before they're ready to put in a vehicle, either in the States or here in Ontario. And so it'll talk about how we are hand in glove, and that the governors and the president certainly need to understand the tight working relationship that we have and a successful century partnership that we have.
Minister, we have about 20 seconds. Can I just ask you really quickly? Some experts have said the impact would be devastating on not just Ontario, but Canada if those tariffs go ahead. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I think Minister Wilson has talked in the legislature about a large number, and it's a daunting number, but we just got to make sure that we make our case and make it strong, and have everybody completely understand that our two governments are really, our two markets are really interwoven.
All right, Minister, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Katie.
That's Ontario's Finance Minister Vic Fedeli. We'll be right back with more Power and Politics.